Have you thought about why stretching isn't fixing your tight muscles? Here's how this usually plays out. You have a quote unquote tight muscle. You keep stretching it, the same muscle over and over and over again, only to have it feel tight again the very next day. Maybe it's your hamstrings, maybe it's your shoulders, your neck, or that tricky spot in your low back that never seems to stay loose for very long at all. At some point, it's completely reasonable to wonder, is this muscle actually tight, or is there something else going on? Because here's something that surprises almost everyone. Weak muscles don't always feel weak. Sometimes they feel incredibly tight. And if we automatically assume every tight muscle needs another stretch, we may be completely missing what our body is trying to tell us. So today, I'd like to help you begin thinking about muscle tightness in a completely different way. Not so you can diagnose yourself, but so you can start asking better questions. Because better questions often lead to better movement decisions. Hi there, I'm Heather. Welcome back to our Body Literacy series, where we're learning to understand what our bodies are communicating instead of simply reacting to symptoms. In fact, that's the same philosophy behind the Everyday Athlete Field Guide. It's all about becoming more curious, asking better questions, and learning to work with your body instead of constantly feeling like you're working against it. Over the last few videos, we've talked about posture, compensation, and why stretching isn't always the answer. Today, we're taking the next step. Because if stretching isn't always the answer, how do you know what your body actually needs? The good news is you don't need to memorize anatomy. You don't need years of experience, and you don't need to have all of the answers. You simply need to become a little more curious about what your body is communicating. One of the biggest misconceptions I see is the belief that weak muscles should feel weak. But our bodies are far more intelligent than that and far more adaptable than that. So I'd like you to think about carrying a heavy grocery bag with one arm. At first, it doesn't seem like a big deal, right? But as the minutes pass by, those muscles begin working harder and harder to keep doing their job. Eventually, your grip starts to tighten. Your forearm feels tense. Your shoulder begins to work a little harder. Not because those muscles suddenly need stretching, but because they're working near the edge of their current capacity. Our muscles often respond this way. When they're asked to work harder than they're prepared for, they frequently increase tension. Not because they're asking for more mobility, but because they're trying to create more stability. And that's where things become confusing because a muscle that's asking for stability can feel remarkably similar to a muscle that's asking for more mobility. The sensation can be almost identical, but what your body needs may be completely different. For years, I think many of us have been taught to ask one simple question: what should I stretch? It's an understandable question, but I don't think it's the most helpful one. The question I'd encourage you to begin asking is this one: why does this muscle feel tight? That one small shift really can change everything. Maybe it truly needs more mobility. Maybe it's been working overtime because another area isn't contributing as efficiently as it could. Maybe another joint isn't moving particularly well. Or maybe that muscle has simply reached the edge of what it's currently capable of doing. The answer, it won't always be obvious, and that's okay. Body literacy isn't about having all the answers. It's about learning to become curious before jumping to conclusions. Because curiosity almost always leads us somewhere better than assumptions. So let me give you an everyday example. Let's imagine you've spent the afternoon preparing a holiday meal. You've been standing in the kitchen for hours, chopping vegetables, lifting pots, walking back and forth, cleaning up as you go. By the end of the day, your lower back feels tight. Most of us immediately think, I need to stretch my back. And maybe that helps. But before you do, pause for just a moment. What if your lower back isn't asking for another stretch? What if it's simply been doing extra work all afternoon? Maybe your hips have become stiff from standing in one place. Maybe your glutes have become tired after hours on your feet. Maybe your abdominal muscles have gradually stopped contributing as much as they did when you first started cooking. Your lower back, quietly, it steps in to help. Not because it's broken, not because it's failing, but because your body is incredibly adaptable. When one area contributes a little less, another area often contributes a little more. That's one of the most amazing things about being human. Our bodies are constantly finding ways to keep us moving. The challenge is that those hardworking muscles often begin to feel tight. So hamstrings are one of the most common examples I see. After more than 20 years of teaching yoga and functional movement, I can't tell you how many times someone has said to me, my hamstrings are always tight. So I usually ask one simple question. What have you been doing for them? Almost every time, the answer is, well, I stretch them. And sometimes that's exactly what they need, but not always. Some people truly do need more mobility. Others need more strength. Others need their hips to move a little bit better. Others need their pelvis to contribute more efficiently during movement. The symptom may sound exactly the same. My hamstrings feel tight. But the reason behind the tightness can be completely different. That's why two people can walk into the same yoga class, complain about the exact same symptom, and benefit from completely different approaches. That's also why I'm so passionate about body literacy, because I don't want you to simply memorize a handful of exercises. I want you to begin understanding the why behind what you're feeling. One of the biggest changes in my own teaching happened when I stopped asking, how do I make this muscle relax? And started asking, what is this muscle trying to accomplish? That one question changed everything. Instead of seeing a tight muscle as the problem, I started seeing it as information, a message, a clue, not necessarily something that needed to be fixed immediately, but something worth listening to. Because our muscles aren't random. They respond to the demands we place on them every single day. They're constantly adapting, constantly helping, constantly doing their very best with the movement options we give them. When we begin looking at our bodies through that lens, our relationship with movement changes. Instead of fighting with our bodies, we begin partnering with them. And I think that's a much kinder way to approach movement. So here's something that I'd love for you to try this week. The next time a muscle feels tight, before you immediately reach for another stretch, just pause, take one slow, deep breath, and ask yourself a different question. Instead of asking, what should I stretch? Try asking, why might this muscle be working so hard? Has this area been tight for a long time? Does stretching really seem to help? Or does the tightness always come right back? Does this muscle seem to get tired easily? Is another area feeling stiff or difficult to move? You don't have to diagnose yourself, you don't have to memorize anatomy, and you certainly don't have to have all of the answers. Just begin paying attention to those patterns. Because every time you become a little more curious, you're developing something much more valuable than another stretch. You're developing body literacy, and that's a skill you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. One of the most empowering things that I've learned over the past 22 years of teaching movement is this: our bodies are rarely working against us. More often than not, they're doing exactly what they've been asked to do. Sometimes that means a muscle becomes stronger. Sometimes it becomes more mobile. Sometimes another muscle quietly steps in to help. And sometimes that helpful adaptation shows up as tension. Not because your body is failing, but because it's doing its very best with the movement options it has available. I think that's such an important shift, because the moment we stop assuming our bodies are broken, we can start becoming curious about what they're really trying to tell us. And curiosity changes everything. Instead of chasing symptoms, we begin recognizing patterns. Instead of reacting, we begin understanding. And instead of feeling frustrated, we begin working with our bodies instead of constantly feeling like we're fighting against them. And to me, that's what body literacy is all about. So, if today's conversation helped you to think maybe a little bit differently about muscle tightness, I think you'll really enjoy the Everyday Athlete Field Guide. It's designed to help you better understand how your body communicates through movement so you can make more confident decisions instead of simply reacting to symptoms. I'll leave a link in the description below if you'd like to learn more. And if you're enjoying this body literacy series, I'd love to have you subscribe. Every Tuesday, we'll continue exploring how our bodies adapt, communicate, and support us, one conversation at a time. Because here's something that's fascinating: your body is adapting every single day. Every workout, every walk, every hour you spend sitting, every habit, every repetition, your body is constantly changing to meet the demands you place on it. The amazing part? Those adaptations can move you toward greater resilience or gradually pull you away from it. Next time, we're going to explore how your body adapts, for better or for worse. Because once you understand how adaptation works, you can begin making choices that help your body adapt in your favor. So just remember, your body isn't trying to confuse you, it's trying to communicate with you. The more you understand those messages, the more confidently you can move through your everyday life. So until next time, keep moving, stay curious, and take really good care of yourself.